And we are recording. Hello, Tina. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. And I was trying to think, and back in my head, all the times I've worked with your mother, and I think, why haven't we met?
Yeah, I don't think we actually did ever meet in person. I feel like maybe we were on set at the same time at some point, but I don't, but you know how it is. It's like you're on and I'm just crossing through or vice versa. So I don't think we've ever actually met in person. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, I know it's only been about 20 something years, you know.
Well, to be fair, I don't go on TSC that often, mostly because my work as a teacher prevents me in doing so because my schedule is pretty tough to, to be free for that. But
Yeah,
so I was only really ever available on weekends and summer and stuff like that. So
yeah,
yeah.
it's a real nutty business. Now, were you doing television film work prior to becoming a teacher?
A little bit. I actually, my degree is in radio and television from Ryerson
Oh,
University.
okay.
So yeah, so I started in that avenue and I was doing a lot of volunteer work at Rogers Cable and stuff like that and getting kind of my face out there. But then I guess I just kind of got impatient. And as you know, this business is fickle and sometimes it takes a while to get going and I wanted to kind of start my life and have a family because those things were more important to me. So I thought, what job could I have that would allow me to, start a family and spend time with my family? And I thought, teacher, perfect. So that's
Yeah,
kind of how that happened. I definitely wasn't one of those people that, in grade 2 was like, I'm going to be a teacher. No.
yeah, that definitely wasn't me at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's interesting because it's just interesting with the story we're going to talk about today, and about your journey and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of times, working in that industry can really, what's the best word to say, amplify any things that are going on inside you, because it is one of those industries that it's very much on a superficial level. And
Hmm.
yeah, I've been in that industry for years. I totally understand the complexities of it and what it can do to somebody's self-esteem and self-imaging and stuff like that. Was
So
that part
true.
of the journey? Is that part of the journey too, is self that kind of, you know, amplified or, kind of pushed a little bit more of what was going on with you?
Absolutely. So before I got into Ryerson for radio and television and attempted a television broadcasting career, I was modeling. So I did a lot of modeling
Okay.
as a teenager. And that was really what made things difficult for me. And it's funny, it sounds like a lot of people think like when you're in the modeling world, you'd think, well, you get paid for how you look. So obviously you must feel confident with how you look. And it's actually can be quite the opposite because it's a
Yeah.
very cutthroat industry as you were talking about. And it's funny because if you don't have the confidence when you walk into that audition room, when you walk in and see basically 50 girls that pretty much look exactly like you, except they're in your eyes, because if you're not confident with yourself, then they are prettier, have better skin, have better hair, like, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
So that was a very tough industry, and at the time, I just didn't have the thick enough skin and the confidence to pull it off. So yeah, that kind of had a negative effect on my confidence. Really, yeah, it brought me down a few notches for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting how that does, and I can relate to it too because I've been in that same boat. It was interesting too because when you're in that industry where you're definitely doing modeling, so like because we did cross over, you do modeling slash acting slash whatever, and you're
Yeah.
just trying to get out there and get your face known. And it's interesting. I remember going to auditions too as well, and they always ask for model looking people, right? And I remember going into that and said, hey, you look great. You look like the model, but I was too short. That was the rub. I was always too short. And I had an agent one day said to me, he says, Mike, you know what? If you were 6'2", you'd be a millionaire. I said, oh, geez. I said,
Thanks.
thanks.
It's not like that's anything you can change.
No, but I certainly thought about it at the time. I said, what can I do? And it's like, yeah, it's really interesting how that industry will just just erode any self confidence in your own image and things like that. So yeah, let's talk about your journey and how you came into yoga, because this is something myself, yoga. If you were to ask me about yoga like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I just said, yoga's that's crap. Why would why would anybody
Too.
want to take yoga? That is
Yeah.
like that. But now, since being embraced and actually taking classes in yoga, I'm a big fan of it, and I know you are too as well.
Yes. And that's so funny that you say that because I like to tell the story of my first experience with yoga, and it was not good. And so I was 20 years old or ish, like I think I was in second or third year university in Toronto, and my roommate convinced me to go because it was starting to be a very hot, popular thing. This is now like mid 90s, late 90s.
Yeah.
And I was pretty physically fit. Like I enjoyed sports and things like that. So I was always active. And so I thought, yeah, yeah, sure, why not? No problem. Like I can do this. And so we went to this studio, and I think if I recall correctly, I paid $20 for a drop-in class, which is probably not that expensive, but for a university student in the mid
Yeah.
90s, that was a lot of money. I could have spent that on much better things at that time, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, I really had a horrible experience because number one, I think we signed up for some kind of advanced class, and so everyone in the class knew what they were doing. So the instructor was saying this pose, that pose, yada yada yada, and I was just like looking around and like I felt like I was always 2 steps behind. And as a competitive person who played sports, I was like, yeah, I suck at this. I just lost. And I didn't know then what I know now is that it's not a competition, and it's not you're not competing against the people in your class. It's just kind of competing against yourself, which is a lot of sport and fitness is just doing it yourself anyway. But yeah, I really walked out of there going like, yeah, that's not for me. And it wasn't until many, many years later that I kind of got back involved, but I did it by myself. I did it through like DVDs and things because I didn't really want to go back to the yoga studio because of that first really intimidating experience.
Yeah.
And again, this is me at that age where I was really self-conscious. Even though I say I was active, I was heavier than I am now, and I was really, I just had very low self-esteem, like with in terms of my appearance. And so walking into that studio and seeing all these in my mind, keep in mind I was 20 years old, skinny, yeah, yoga
Yeah.
people and like in their fancy yoga clothes, and I was like, in shorts and a t-shirt probably, and really, really uncomfortable in my skin.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until so again, I don't know if it's a maturity thing or if it's just finally kind of buying into some of the philosophical side of yoga that maybe maturity allowed me to. But finally now in my 40s, I can finally say that I don't I enjoy yoga for the physical aspect because I really love a good, strong power yoga that makes me feel very powerful. But I also really love the self work and the soul searching that goes along with it, and the breath work too.
Yeah, I mean, it is really powerful. And it's interesting you talk about your experiences because I think we all had experiences where the first yoga class, it was just like the first one I went to, that it took me a couple of ones, but I just thought, man, is this what yoga is all about? And it confirmed all the stereotypes in my head. It was like I had this instructor who was, it was kind of like this guru type instructor where they knew everything, and it was very loud, and then everybody was doing these poses, and I mean, I was not the most flexible guy in the world, so I struggled for these poses. And at the time, I was usually besides either the instructor, I was usually the only male in the class. So that could be, as much as, it can be very intimidating for guys to go into a studio like that. And for someone who's an empath and feel it, because one thing about yoga, like you're releasing a lot of stuff coming up. And if you are an empath, you pick that up. And it's not always the most enjoyable because you just feel the people releasing their anger, their junk, and everything out. And I was like, God, is this what it's all about? I really don't want to be there. But then afterwards, when I finally kind of got out of it and I got out of my head and I realized, wow, geez, I feel so much lighter. I feel good. I mean, is this what they're really talking about? Is this what yoga is all about?
Yeah, exactly. I think you really do have to go into it with an open mind because you're right. There is a very stereotypical yogi vibe, and people think that. And a lot of people think like they just can't do yoga. It's just like, yeah, I can't do yoga. And it's like, really, anyone can do it. It's just a matter of where you are. Like, honestly, when I first started, I couldn't touch my toes. I had very, very tight hamstrings and I couldn't touch my toes, but now I can. And that's over years of practice. And there are still certain poses that I am working on and I still can't do. But you're learning every time and you're learning a little bit about yourself. And one of the great things that I've learned through my experience is just to, again, as I mentioned about the whole competition thing, it's not a competition. And so many times, because I just have that competitive mentality, my dad was a professional hockey player, and so I kind of grew up in that whole, my brother played hockey, and so it was all about sports and stuff like that. And um, so I was always like, okay, so if yesterday I did 10 push-ups, then I should be able to do at least 10, if not 11 today. But maybe I had a bad sleep last night, or maybe I've got a lot going on in my mind, and maybe I just need to be a little bit more forgiving of myself and not worry about hitting that 10 mark. The most important thing is that I'm here in my space and putting that effort in, even if I can't meet what I did yesterday. It doesn't mean I'm a failure. It just
Yeah.
means that I'm listening to my body, and my body's telling me not today. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and that's really important is to really think. I mean, one of the things I've heard yoga compared to, they say it's the martial art you compete with yourself with.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you're really competing with your own mind and your body, and it's that kind of retraining that animal body that we have. All those things that those programmings that get stuck in that kind of show up when you're in your pose, and you're supposed to be mindful, and then all of a sudden,
Mhm.
it's that rat in that wheel, and it's just spinning, and then you just keep thinking and all these thoughts and images, and it's interesting. The all those different poses will actually affect the way you think and the way you move and the energy. That's what I found.
It's
That's
true, and that's why like the sequencing of them are really important too. And sometimes, like, again, when I first started yoga, not only that 20 years ago, but also when I started it again in my 30s. I started it in my 30s because I was very focused on fitness. I was doing a lot of running, like I was running like half marathons and stuff like that. And I knew that I needed to do more stretching. And so that's kind of how I got into it in my 30s. And like I said, I just bought DVDs because I didn't really want to go to a studio. I just did it at home. But what I didn't really understand was like some of those poses that are like balancing poses, for example. I'd be standing in a balancing pose and I'd be like, this is dumb. What am I doing? Like I don't like didn't get the connection. And now as I learned through my yoga teacher training and just with more and more experiences that those balancing poses are more for your mind than for your body, because like you said, once you start, that wheel keeps spinning and your mind is perpetually going off into all sorts of directions, and that's just the natural human brain. But when you can learn to kind of control that and contain that and focus on just one thing at a time, that's where you hit that magic. And that's where those tree poses and things that kind of feel like you're not physically doing anything, it's more work on your mind, which is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, because it really is that it's that mind body connection that
Yes.
yoga is so powerful. And you kind of think about it as just an exercise, it's kind of an exercise. It's about flexibility, but it's so much more. And it really does with energy movement. And I'm always a big fan of energy movement, obviously, because I'm a Reiki guy. So it's really about energy. And, as I study more about energy and moving through stuff like that, there is the meridians that run along the body points, just in acupuncture, stuff like that. When you do these poses, it elongates and it moves, and it's kind of like it's like doing your own type of acupressure, and it just allows for that expansion of energy to move through in different poses, and that's where a lot of the healing ability comes through in yoga, which is so fantastic.
It's so true. And that paired with the breath work, right? So when you learn to like, you realize you've been holding your breath for 10 seconds or 20 seconds, then you let it out. And all of a sudden you can like feel your body start to kind of like just relax and kind of melt in. And then you're like, oh, okay. Now I get it. Right. So yeah, the breath work and tied in with the different movements and the poses and the stretches, they all really work together. And then of course, there's that other element of that, like the limbs of yoga and just the positivity, like trying to retrain your brain to take away that negative voice and replace it with a positive voice. And there's just so many layers. It's really can be quite life changing for many people.
Yeah. So let's talk about how it changed your life. I mean, let's talk about your kind of evolution. I mean, you started doing it, and again, you did it in your 30s, and then where did it really kind of hit for you? Where it's like, you know what? Yeah, this is my jazz. This is what I'm really feeling this now. I think there's something about this that can really change my life. Where was that kind of that trigger? Where's that little step that kind of just finally took you over to that edge?
Well, it was actually a friend of mine who was taking a yoga teacher training. I was chatting with her at a Christmas party when we all could gather. This was, gosh, like now 4 years ago. And she was currently taking a yoga teacher training locally up, I'm in like north of Toronto. So she was taking it in Gravenhurst, Ontario. And, and so I was just talking to her about it. She was also a fellow teacher, like I'm a school teacher, and so was she. And so I said, oh, you know what? That's something that I think I might like to try one day when I retire. I just kind of thought at this point I was doing it kind of casually. I was going back to studios. I finally found studios that I felt comfortable with, and I was enjoying yoga for not only just the physical part, but I was feel like I was, getting a little bit mentally from it, but not really a whole lot at this point. And I said, well, maybe someday when I retire. And she said, well, why wait? So she was right in the midst of her yoga teacher training and really just right in that moment of like grasping onto opportunities when they come to you. And so she kind of shared that with me. And I realized, you know what? Yeah, maybe this is the fact that the two of us got brought together to have this conversation. I've got to move on this. And so I did. And so a couple months later, I entered another session, which was a 200-hour yoga teacher training. And I really fully expected it to be, because after that conversation at the Christmas party, her and I didn't really connect much more after that. So I didn't really know a lot about what she was doing, but she did tell me it was life-changing. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, the skeptical brain goes in.
Yeah, right. I'm like, okay, she drank the yoga Kool-Aid, right? Anyway, so I'm like, okay, well, not so much because she said it was life-changing, but more just because I bought into the idea that this opportunity was presented to me at this exact moment and I needed to take it. So I did. And so anyway, I was fully expecting it to be more about learning about alignment, learning about the different names of the poses, sequencing it all together. I kind of thought it was going to be more sciencey, like physical sciencey, right?
Yeah.
And it was, and we learned a little bit about that, but it was way more soul searching than I ever thought it was going to be. Like, it was honestly so therapeutic to me, those 200 hours. I met so many amazing people who were all at different points in their lives. All of them were here for different reasons, and we all just learned together, and we really bonded as a group. And one of the things that our teacher kind of had us do at the very end, it was sort of this culminating task, and for him, he called it riding the magic carpet. It was about a month long, this training, because it was just on the weekends, or maybe it was actually more like 2 months. Anyway, all the way through, he kept talking about, like, at the end, we're going to ride this magic carpet. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Anyway, riding the magic carpet literally meant standing on your mat in front of your whole group and basically announcing, because that whole piece about actually verbalizing what it is that's eating you up inside, announcing what it is you need to let go of and get it out of your body and out of your mind, and share it with everybody else and let everyone else help heal you. And for me, it was my issues with my body image. Now, this particular yoga studio that we were in practicing for all these hours was completely mirrors. And I hated it. I hated that I could see myself in all angles working on these poses. I was constantly kind of glimpsing at myself in the mirror and being like, like I wish that I couldn't see what I looked like, because I was, just unhappy with how I looked. And this is going back, as you mentioned, years and years and years of damage done by, and I don't want to say the modeling industry, because no one really ever told me negative things about myself. It was just all stuff I imposed on myself by comparing myself to other people, right? So,
I'm glad
anyway,
you clarified that too, because
because
I bash on it a bit once in a while, the industry. It just it was my own perspective and
exactly.
yeah.
Because when I talked to my mother about it, who was also in the modeling industry, she kind of looks at me and she's like, I don't get it. You were actually way more successful than I ever was. And I'm like, I know, technically, monetarily, yes, but I didn't feel it. Like, I just always felt less than. And again, it's not from anyone in particular. It just was me. It was just me. So anyway,
it's our own issues. Yeah.
Yeah. It just exemplified my own issues with feeling. And I was a chubby kid too. And so I kind of went through stages of that. And so it kind of just brought back bad memories. But anyway, and also just clarifying the whole modeling thing. Because I am a bigger person, like I have a very athletic build, it was always a fight for me to maintain that model size, which now in the modeling industry, I mean, it still exists to some degree, but the modeling industry's changed so much, which is awesome. You're seeing so much more diversity of size and gender and color and all those types of things. So that's amazing. But in the 90s, it was very much you had to be 34, 24, 34, 5'9" at least, you know, all those markers, as you know.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm like 5'8.5", so I was just I would lie about that and wear heels, right? So
Yeah.
anyway,
I didn't
yeah,
have that luxury of wearing
that's
heels.
right. That might have been weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, so getting back to the whole yoga bit, all those years of just constantly fighting with my body and thinking that happiness would come to me if I was 10 pounds lighter, if 15 pounds lighter, whatever, what that number I was trying to reach on the scale, I was always fighting to reach that point. And so seeing myself in this 360 mirror for these 200 hours doing yoga and comparing myself to other women, it was really, really hard. And so that was my thing. That was my thing that I had to let go of. And I did. And it was so, I know it sounds hokey, but it was really freeing. Now, I'm not going to say that that riding the carpet moment was like all of a sudden a switch went off. But what it did was, it was a combination of that, daily gratitude journaling, and daily positive affirmations that really did help me change my negative mindset about my body and flip it into something more positive. And
Yeah.
so it was a combination of those three things, really. But that's what yoga basically has really taught me. And it's been quite a journey. And I really hope that by me becoming a yoga teacher and sharing my story, that I can help those women and men who are unsatisfied with how they look, or whatever their dissatisfaction is, I guess, and just trying to change that narrative in their mind from a negative to a positive.
Yeah, and that's so profound. And I'm really glad you touched on that too as well, because that's really what it's all about. It's about sharing and healing, helping people, empowering them to heal themselves. And you know, that body shaming that we all kind of have, and just shame in general that we kind of linger in with our own thoughts, and those messages that I mean, we would never in our life would say those things to other people, but why would we say them to ourselves? You know,
Yeah.
it's interesting. And as you do that journaling, and again, you did your work, which is I really love the fact that you kind of separated. It wasn't just like that one thing. It was like time. Like you did 200 hours, and it's like 200 hours of therapy. Like you went in there every day and you did your work. You did your inner work, which is part of the process of healing. You know, as much as we like to look for other things to help us heal, you had to go inside and really do your work and accept who you are, like this beautiful human being, and really embrace that. And once you empower people with those type of messages, it is so it's so magical to see that light that's just, they have that shine again, and their own divinity just kind of just, you know, washes away all that other crap that kind of goes on with life. And yeah, it's very, very, very powerful.
It really is. And like one example is, again, I talked about my issues with my body and being quite athletic and never quite fitting that mold of the model, even though I in unhealthy ways got there, but couldn't maintain it because it just wasn't my frame. And so one of the things I always disliked so much about my body was my legs, because I have very muscular legs. I kind of get them from my hockey player dad. I should have, you know, back in the 70s and 80s when I grew up, girls didn't really play hockey, and it's too
No.
bad because I think I would have been really good.
Oh, I
But
think you would have been devastated out there.
but anyway, I have very muscular, athletic legs, let's say. And so for years, I hated that because I really wanted that long, thin leg that the models had. And even at my thinnest, I still didn't really have that. And so one of the things that I learned to do, again, through lots and lots of practice and work and gratitude journaling and changing that mindset, is learning to appreciate my legs for what they do. And they do so many awesome things all day long. Like they allow me to do those half marathons that I enjoy, and they allow me to do yoga, and they allowed me when my kids were little to be able to chase them and play with them and all those things, right? And so I guess the idea here is just, if you can turn a negative into a positive, it can be really life-changing. And that's what I learned to do through yoga, and that's what I still do every single day. Like you're right, it's not like a quick fix. It's
Yes.
daily work forever.
Yeah, it's it's really interesting you talk about that because I've always had the opposite because I was always a skinny kid. I was very skinny, and I had like the skinniest legs. And it's amazing when you think about it. And it's that self love when you look at that because basically you were doing mirror work. You were looking in the mirror and focusing on that. And it's one of those techniques that in psychotherapy they let's do some mirror work and kind of look at yourself in the mirror and start because then your brain kind of goes, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. Oh, I hate that. Oh, I wish my face was like this, and I wish I had this. And when you start doing that mirror work and you give that love, and you actually talk to your body, and actually love those aspects of yourself, you start integrating that, and again, you start thinking, which is so powerful. And it's just not just the legs. Then you can start working with your hips, and then it's your arms, and then it's your heart, and then it's your face, and then just in general, everything just starts changing. Now, it's really interesting too because you being a teacher too as well, but you're working at high school right now, high school level, right? Is correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So are you integrating a yoga program with the high school students there?
Yes, I'm so excited. So one of the main another main reason why I took my yoga teacher training was because I did want to bring it to my school. So I was a few years back, I got moved to a different school due to numbers and just teacher stuff. That's boring. But
Yeah, all
anyway,
that political stuff.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I had to switch schools, and I was at another school for 3 years, and then I had the opportunity to come back to my hometown school. And during those 3 years that I was at a different school, it was really neat because I got to see what other schools do and other courses that they offer. And so this one particular school had a course because the teacher was also a trained yoga instructor, and it was focused mainly on yoga. And so I thought this is such a cool. The girl, like, and I say the girls because it generally was girls. It was open to boys, but it was mostly girls, and they just loved it. And they did way more than yoga. They did community involvement work, and they did like lots of self-love and meditation, mindfulness, all those things. And so I really wanted to bring that to my school when I returned. And so taking the yoga teacher training, that was really one of my reasons for taking it as well, is that I did want to bring it to the school. And so luckily I had a very supportive and encouraging principal who loved the idea, and she helped me develop this course. And so it's a phys ed, and so it's open to girls and boys, but it's mostly girls. And yeah, it's sort of meant to bring in those girls that probably after grade 9 gym that they kind of have to take would never step foot in a gym again. And that's too bad because there's so much to learn about physical fitness. My department head in the school, that's the head of the physical education program, he is so passionate, and he often says, this is the most important subject in the whole school. And not too many people like see it that way, but if you really think about it, physical education is so incredibly important because we're planting seeds for the rest of your life, like kind of creating those habits. And so that's my goal with my students, is to show them, if you don't like sports and you don't like running around the track, that's okay. There are other ways that you can stay fit and you can stay healthy in your body and your mind, and just give them alternative ways that they can maintain health and physical health and mental health for their whole life.
Yeah, and yeah, that's so amazing. Like, I don't know where I've seen this study, but they were talking about doing studies they did yoga with inner city kids in the United States, and they've seen such a profound change in their behavior
Yeah.
and their outlook in life. And these are really impoverished areas in inner cities in the United States, and where they don't have a lot of options. And they were bringing yoga into their classes, and and the kids were so excited. And because obviously, as a teacher and a mom, sometimes the kids can just be so rambunctious. You just can't get them to focus and control on anything. But once they got them into the yoga practice, it just like this switch turned off, and they just became these whole new other beings. And the level of, I guess, I guess I'm trying to think of the word, they were acting up. So they stopped acting up less in the
Mhm.
classroom and became more focused, and they were able to actually focus more on their actual schoolwork. So their learning abilities increased too as well.
Well, we've noticed too, like with COVID, right? So I also teach other subjects. So currently I was teaching a drama class. And so, and I also teach English as well. But we noticed that as soon as you take the kids outside and they're allowed their little, like their walk, and this is why like the recess for the little kids is so important, right? You got to kind of burn that energy a little bit, and then you can come back and you can be so much more productive. But getting back to yoga too, like because I am trained to do it, so what happened now is that sometimes the other phys ed teachers would ask me to cover their class. We'd switch, so I would do yoga with their class, like with the grade 12 boys, for example, and
Yeah.
then they would do, so we'd swap. And we also have a program at our school called Hockey Academy, and they get credit for maintaining and improving their hockey skills. And it's actually a really cool program from Hockey Canada. And so sometimes I would go and do yoga with them about once a month, and it's so incredible to see these hockey players, these 14, 15-year-old boys and girls, but mostly boys.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, when you're in that like shavasana,
Yeah.
you can hear a pin drop in there, and it's
Yeah.
like magic. It's really cool. And yeah, they buy into it, and they get it. But it's takes time,
Yeah.
and it takes an open mind, because again, so many people like, oh, I can't do yoga, I can't even touch my toes. Like, that's okay. You'll get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, you'll eventually get there. And even if you don't, that's just one of those goals.
Yeah.
You may be able to do another pose or do something else. Again, it's really about yourself, not competing with others, which is the great thing, because it's always about the self and integrating that versus, always that competition level. And
Hmm.
it's so kind of cool to see that you're working with those hockey players too. I mean, it's such a norm now. I think most professional athletes out there are doing yoga, and like all you have to do is, like, if you're a big football fan, you'll see football players on the sideline doing yoga stretches, and they're doing their poses and they're stretching out and everything else. And it's such a mainstream now. It's for people to say, like, I can't do yoga. Well, yeah, you can. Yeah, and I encourage it. Like, so there's a lot of things I encourage for people to try. Yoga is like one of them, and it's the
Yeah.
simplest thing. Again, the hard thing is just finding the right studio and the right teachers. Like, not everybody's going to be like going. There's a couple studios I went to, and it's like, I'll never go back to that. It was crap. It was just
Yeah,
crap.
and I agree. You got to find one that fits for you, and I think that's sort of my philosophy too. Is that originally I wanted to call myself the regular yogi, and the reason I wanted to call myself that is because I'm just like a regular person, just like you, who happened to find yoga and happen to help me, but I don't really take it to a level where it's very like, you know, like we're not, I do believe in the meditation piece and the mindfulness piece for sure, but you know what I mean? Sometimes certain studios are a little bit more on that
Woo
end,
woo, you'd say.
a little bit. And you know
Yeah.
what? Hey, that some people love that, and that's awesome. My philosophy is a little bit more kind of down to earth, and like that, this is something for everybody, depending on, where you want to start. We can start wherever you're at, and just learning little tiny things. One of the things I often, will use as an analogy for someone who's trying to meditate or even just be quiet and mindful even during that shavasana is I think about a puppy. And if you've ever had a puppy and tried to train a puppy, you know that there's a couple things that happen. You need to be persistent with that puppy. You need to praise the puppy. You need to be patient with that puppy. And so if you think about your mind as that little puppy, it's going to wander off, and it's going to, do things that it shouldn't. And so you just need to kindly, with patience and persistence, bring it back, and then praise the puppy when it's doing good things. And that's the same things we have to kind of do with our brain, is just sort of remind ourselves that it's going to take time, and we just have to be kind, and then just give ourselves lots of praise when things go well. And so when you're meditating and your mind wanders, which it will, just kindly bring it back, and that's okay. And if you do it for 30 seconds, great. Then maybe the next time you can build it up to a minute or whatever. Like, it's just practicing, starting where you're at is the key, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's so true. Like, it's got to be, it's just self-love. Just be kind to yourself out of it. I mean, it'll start, and it'll just become a natural practice. Like anything you want to get good at, you just got to practice at it. It just takes time, and
Yeah.
and it's so easy. It's like I'm sitting down, relaxing, and just breathing. Okay, can't get any simpler than that. And then just, again, just the length of time you focus on that. Again, like you said, starts 30 seconds, and then maybe goes to 35, maybe it goes to 36, and then it just expands. And then you're building that neural network in the brain, and it just becomes easier, it becomes second nature. So once you get into that position, your body goes, oh, we're in Shavasana. I think I'm just going to just chill out right now and just shut
Yeah.
down. And then automatically, a minute later or 2 minutes later, and it's like, I feel like I've been here for an hour.
Right. And I think people say, like, just like you said, like, we're just breathing, we're not doing anything. And so that's part of, like, everyone's so busy, right? So, like, what do you mean? I'm just supposed to sit here? I'm not doing anything. I'm like, precisely. You're not supposed to do anything. And that's okay. We always feel like in our society that we have to be going here, like every minute needs to be filled. And we often don't prioritize just chilling. And chilling to you or to anybody, it might mean lying on the couch and watching TV, but that's not really chilling. Like your mind is still active as you're watching TV or whatever you're doing. So it's okay to pencil in nothing time, and that nothing time is not nothing. It's actually work, but it's just peace.
Yeah. And that's what we really need is inner peace. You know, we're always struggling for things outside of us to find that inner peace, and we're always struggling to look for the next thing outside of us. And you really have to kind of focus inward and get that peace and that inner joy. And that's where the happiness really begins. It's not always the stuff that we want to accumulate in life and use other things to distract us, like television and every other thing that goes on in this world to distract us from who we really are. And you know, it's really important that you know you can actually do these sort of things. Are there certain poses that, you know, I was always curious, are there certain poses that, you know, people can do to start out with at home that would be just very beneficial, just to kind of get them introduce them to yoga without kind of, you know, doing some advanced vinyasa moves and things like that they could do at home?
I just love like a rag doll. So literally you're just standing and then you just kind of fold forward and you just let your upper body kind of be heavy and weigh you over. And that way you get a beautiful stretch through the back of your legs and your lower back. Sometimes you can even kind of hug your elbows like this and sway from side to side. So it's just a release of your upper body, giving your lower body a stretch. That's a beautiful, easy pose that you could do, you know, even if you are watching TV and you just get up during the commercial break and you do that. I also love one of my favorites. I'll move my laptop back just a bit so you can see. It's moon. So you just reach up and you connect your hands like this, and then just as you exhale, lean to the side. And then inhale, come back up and lean to the other side. And it really is just a beautiful pose to open up your rib cage. And it just allows you to, as you exhale, to get a little deeper on each side. It feels such a really nice stretch through the sides. Those are easy and accessible to everyone. And they both combine movement and breath, because what you want to do is kind of move on the exhale. You'll notice you'll have more room. It's kind of neat. Like if you think about it, like even just sitting here, if you inhale as you turn around and try to look over your shoulder, you can only kind of get so far. But if you inhale first and then exhale as you turn around, all of a sudden, because you're releasing that space, you can move more. And so that's why the breath work with yoga is so important, because when you exhale, you can always get a little deeper into the pose. And that's where you find that next level of relaxation or that bigger version of the stretch. So a forward fold or a moon, like just stretching up and reaching from side to side, just opening up the rib cage, would just feel so, so good.
Yeah, I mean, those are really just simple things. You know, one of the things I really love are a couple poses. I love child's pose,
Yeah, so
and I
that's a
love
good
it,
one too.
and I love the supported child pose. I got into yin yoga, where it's, you know, that very kind of like, because most of the activities you're always doing is very yang. You're very out there. You're very,
Yes.
you know, excess. And so when I found yin yoga as like an only supported poses, like, man, this is so good, because it's just like a relaxation, but you're doing yoga at the same time, and you
Yeah.
get that support, which I think is really important, because, you know, as we're doing this journey, there are sometimes we don't feel supported in general. So having a supportive pose like that and being in child's pose really kind of connects you with that inner child, which is part of the thing that you're kind of healing as you do your yoga. It's that inner self that you're working on too. I think it's fantastic.
Absolutely. And in that child's pose, when you get your head down to the floor, and there's a pressure point right here, so you can kind of even just move your head from side to side and relieve some tension in your forehead while you're in child's pose. It feels really nice.
Yeah, I mean that, and I think the other one was pigeon. I think it's called. I love that too.
Yes.
Just opening up.
It's funny. I used to hate that pose, and they always say the pose that you dislike the most is the one you need the most, because your body's obviously neglecting it, or not neglecting. That's the wrong word. rejecting it is the better word. So you're kind of like desperate to get out of it, and so you're in this pose, and you're like, oh my God, how much longer are we going to be here? And so you really need to find a way to surrender into those moments and just let someone else kind of take the wheel. So if the instructor is just saying we're going to stay here for a little while, and you know you're going to have to settle in, let your breath just settle in. I always say too, when you're in a pose that's maybe a little bit uncomfortable, or really any pose, and you find that you're not relaxed, start by relaxing the face. Because I always find that once the eyes, like maybe like the brows here, right? So if you're in a pose and it's kind of strenuous, you might find yourself doing this. So, okay, relax the face, relax the jaw, open the mouth a little bit. And then once you do that, it's almost like this veil of relaxation kind of just comes over you, and it's sort of like a wave effect. So it starts up here, and then all of a sudden your shoulders relax, and then okay, and then everything kind of melts right in. So I had to really learn that in pigeon pose, because when I was in pigeon, I would just be like, "Get me out of this."
Yeah, it's interesting because it all depends on the area, because each pose is going to affect certain muscle groups, and again, it'll affect certain chakras too. Because if it's you're having root issues and things like that,
Mhm.
being grounded, it's everything's in the hips and second, and it's amazing when you start doing these poses, all those issues that you had in those areas kind of creep up during those specific poses.
Well, they say that you hold a lot of emotion in your hips. So those hip opening poses like pigeon and lizard and cobbler's pose, that kind of a frog that really open up the hips. Yeah, if you sometimes it unleashes emotion that you didn't realize you had. I've I've shed a few tears on my yoga mat and then just pretended it was sweat. Oh, I'm just sweating. But it's very true. It's quite extraordinary. And I think it's something, again, that people who have maybe never tried yoga or feel like yoga is hokey kind of might think like, oh, that's just like, yeah, she drank the yoga Kool-Aid or whatever. and again, that's why I liked to call I originally wanted to say I was the regular yogi, because I'm still a regular, like I'm not up on a different level or a different planet or anything. I'm a down to earth person who just happened to have these amazing experiences that I do want to share, because if you open your mind to it, you'd be amazed what you can feel and discover.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people get fearful about yoga, is just that, I wouldn't say the warped sense of spirituality when it comes around it. I love the grounded approach. I'm all about grounded stuff. I love the woo woo. I don't mind journeying to the woo woo once in a while, but if you stay in the woo woo, you can't actually start living in the now. You can't be here because you're so busy off in the never land, right? You have to be grounded
Yeah.
approach, and it's nice to connect and really affirm who we really are in our spirituality in that. But again, the practical stuff, we're still stuck in this three-dimensional body, in this animal body. We got to live, and we got to be grounded to it. And it's the great thing, if you can take that woo woo and ground it into this, that's where the power begins.
That's right. And so it's just being open and accepting of what may happen as a result of just experimenting and trying this out. And again, not getting discouraged with yourself when you can't do certain things, like how I felt that very first day I walked into a yoga studio 25 years ago now, and didn't step foot in one for decades later. And it's because I felt out of place, and I felt like I was terrible at it. But just like you said, just like anything in life, it's very rare that you try something for the first time and you're really, really good at it, right? So it's
Yeah.
just takes time and practice, and just know that you're doing good things for not only your body but your mind and your soul. So it's the trifecta.
Yes, it is a really good trifecta for sure. And if you love happiness, you want a little bit of joy and those things. I mean, I'm not going to guarantee it all of a sudden, but I mean, it's a great byproduct of yoga practice. It's just there's that freedom of the emotions that hold you back in life, and just things start opening up, and you just get a different perspective on life in general, because you just seem to be happier. There's a little more positivity, and it could be very subtle, and then all of a sudden it's like, geez, I feel really good today. And then everything just starts flowing. Then you kind of realize, oh, maybe there's something into this yoga. So
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to admit it at first, but like, okay, it's kind of working.
yeah, why do I feel happy? Why do I feel a little bit limber? I'm less pessimistic. I'm not so angry. All those different things that could, that we kind of hang on to as experiencers of this human life that we live.
Exactly. Yeah. and just, yeah, just start where you're at, and be open to a new experience, and don't limit yourself, I guess, is the key, right? Just
Yeah.
see what you can do. You're limitless. We
Yeah.
all are.
Yeah. I really like that. So if there's a few messages that you can leave the listeners and the viewers out there from your journey and your experiences as a yoga instructor, what kind of like inspirational messages can you leave our listeners?
One of my favorite quotes that have stuck with me over the years that I learned a long time ago is, comparison is the thief of joy. And so if we spend our life comparing ourselves to others, we'll never find joy, because we'll always just constantly be trying to be something that we're not. And so yoga really helped me to find happiness and peace and comfort in my body after decades of feeling like I was just uncomfortable in my skin. And I don't have another word for that except just to feel like I just never felt good. I was always, I'll be happy when I lose 10 more pounds. I'll be happy when that scale says blah, blah, blah. And not being able to just be happy and comfortable and at ease in my own skin. And so once you let go of comparing yourself to others, and once you start turning those negative thoughts about, I hate my legs are big, into, I love my legs. My legs allow me to do these awesome things, and run and jump and bike and ski and swim and all these amazing things, play with my kids. Then it's that piece, that gratitude piece, where all of a sudden we're really thankful for the things that maybe we didn't appreciate so much before. So if we can stop comparing, start being a little bit more happy and have gratitude for what we have. And to do those things, I really highly recommend journaling. And I know it sounds kind of hokey, but just having a pen and a pad of paper beside your bed when you go to bed, just jotting down a few things. And also when you wake up in the morning, thinking about, when you wake up in the morning, how you're going to start your day. Because if you wake up in the morning and you're immediately like, ugh, I'm tired, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, then the day is going to follow that vibe. So if you get up in the morning, and even if that journal is right there, and you write a couple things down about what you're thankful for on this day that you woke up and the sun is shining and the birds are singing, or even if it's snowing and it's a blizzard, at least it's you're awake and you're alive, and there's a lot to be thankful for despite these difficult times. So just changing that perspective would be mind-blowing for you. And if you'd like to try yoga to add it all together for that whole trifecta, there's so many resources online, especially now that we are home. I have videos too, which I can send to Michael, and you could post, and lots of different videos for beginners and more advanced. And yeah, if you've never done yoga before, we can just start at the beginning, and
Yeah.
it's not complicated.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you. That was just, where can they find you? Because I know you got an amazing online studio on there. So if people were looking to find you, Tina, and they want to start their yoga practice in their safe home environment on on a very nice, an amazing session there from your videos and stuff like that, where can they find you?
Sure. So my website is Yoga Flow with Tina. So just www.yogaflowwithtina.com. And we have a couple different membership options. So you can check us out for a month or 3 months. And part of the membership is access to the library that I've built up I've got probably about 50 or maybe a few more videos there, again, ranging from beginner to advanced. And then we go live 4 times a week with Zooms. And that's been really, really fun. And I find that more people are enjoying the Zooms. I think I'm getting a lot more people watching the Zooms than the other videos in the library. And I think they just like that connection, right? And they just like to see a face, and that we're all in it together. And it kind of makes you accountable too. Like, oh, my Zoom's at 5, so I gotta be there. And so it's a really great community. We also have a private Facebook page. So if you're on Facebook, then you can join our Facebook page. And every day I post a journal prompt, and just something to kind of start your day with a positive thought. And really, you can always access our Zooms there as well. So it's just a great group. And I really think that being in COVID right now and kind of being in our homes is the perfect opportunity to start this because, as I mentioned, when I first started yoga, I was completely intimidated by the studio experience. And so here you can just do it at home. You don't need a big space, and you don't have to worry about if you're wearing the right clothes or if if you can't follow along because no one's watching. And so
Yeah.
you're just there and you're doing it, and it's a great way to give it a try.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, I highly recommend the videos and the online studio for sure. I mean, amazing personality. I just love your energy, and I think that comes across in your studio. It's a very, very caring energy, which I think is going to transcend there and really help people heal themselves through your videos. And that being said, Tina, we're out of time.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your kind words, and thanks for letting me come on and share my story and my love of yoga and how it changed me and how I can hope I can help you and help other people just feel that comfort and peace within themselves.
Yeah, and that's really important. I really appreciate that too. So, that being said, Tina, I'm just going to sign off on the podcast here. This has been the Metaphysical Mentor podcast with Michael Philpott. Thank you so much for joining me, and goodbye for now.